Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. I do appreciate you being with me so very, very much. Hope you're having a good week so far. And by the way, let me give you this reminder. Not only are my Now TV videos, which are 30 minutes, well, almost 30 minutes long, available for your viewing now on every Friday morning, but you need to be sure to tune in every pardon me, every Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock Central, when William Bell and I have a program, radio program entitled Two Guys on and a Bible. It is on fulfilledradio.com, www.fulfilledradio.com. You can go there and just look up Two Guys and a Bible. We have been involved in a study of the Messianic Temple for a good little while now. It's absolutely fascinating subject and an important subject because, the dispensational world has a belief that we're on the cusp of the end. And by the way, okay, soapbox time and tragic politics time, there are people actually saying that it's probably necessary for Joe Biden to win the election because things have got to get worse so that the Lord can come. And so they recognize that the election, in their own minds, that's what they're saying, would be a tragedy for America. And that would be awful for everyone. That's true, but hey, things have got to get worse and worse so that the Lord can come. Folks, that's a horrid theology and eschatology. Pardon me. Those prophecies of things getting worse and worse, evil men and seducers getting worse and worse in the last days, have nothing to do with our day. They have nothing to do with American politics. We have got to get the message of fulfillment out into the hearts and the lives of more and more people so that they do not have this fatalistic view of the future that says, oh, well, there's not a thing in the world we can do. And as the old cliche went, you don't polish brass on a sinking ship. And, I just don't really want to vote for Mr. Biden because I think that would be just the worst thing that could ever happen to America. But hey, if it hastens the Lord's coming, then I guess I ought to do that. This is nonsense. And please forgive me for my bluntness. I mean no disrespect to anyone. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But this has to be said. This dispensationalism is a fatalistic and a false doctrine. So, moving on. I apologize. I didn't use my respirator before I started, so here we are. So, Jesus said, and he spoke of his coming as a thief. And we are told that what that means is nobody at all, no signs whatsoever, boom, it'll just be here and it'll be over in a moment in the twinkling of an eye. No warning, no signs, no nothing. Well, I want to share with you a passage, and this is absolutely remarkable. The book of Thessalonians, both 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, are directly parallel to the Olivet Discourse. In my book, We Shall Meet Him in the Air, the Wedding of the King of Kings, I adduce at least 22 direct parallels between the Olivet Discourse and 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. The list is very, very impressive. And I'm working on it, by the way, I'm working on a special deal here for the month of August at greatly reduced price to save you good money, put some great material in your hands, and part of that deal will include my book, We Shall Meet Him in the Air. because the parallels between Matthew 24 and 25 and 1st and 2nd Thessalonians are so incredible. They're so powerful that once we see them, we realize, number one, it's simply untenable to say that there are two subjects in the Olivet Discourse. Well, if there are not two subjects in the Olivet Discourse, then there are not two subjects in Thessalonians. And if the Olivet Discourse doesn't have two subjects in it, and it's about AD 70, then 1st and 2nd Thessalonians is about AD 70. Now, that's proven in a variety of ways, but be looking for, in the next day or so, I'm going to make a very special offer on my book, We Shall Meet Him in the Air, The Wedding of the King of Kings. I know that part of that package will include my book, He Came as a Thief. So, one of the parallels between the Olivet Discourse and Thessalonians is, of course, the fact that Jesus spoke of his coming as a thief, and Paul spoke of the Lord's coming as a thief. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, now this is directly connected to his discussion of the Lord's parousia, which he twice referred to as occurring in their lifetime. Twice, folks. Verse 15, verse 17, then those who of us who are alive, that's a present tense verbal form, and those remaining until. He was talking to living, breathing human beings, and some of them were going to live until that event. But you see, in order to defend futurism, you have to do verbal gymnastics. And you have to say, oh, no, Paul wasn't really talking about that generation. He was simply saying, Christians will be alive at the Lord's coming. Really? To move on. All right, I won't get on that soapbox. So, after speaking of the Lord's parousia, in their lifetime, he says, but concerning the times and the seasons. Now, in the first place, that harkens us back to Acts chapter 1, and I'll show you where this thief coming of 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, since it is set in the context of the times and the seasons, just like Acts chapter 1, where Jesus said, it's not for you to know the times and the seasons that the Father has set in his authority, when the apostle had asked, Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? I'm going to show you that those times and the seasons mentioned in both texts was in fact and indeed the first century without any controversy whatsoever. But nonetheless, Paul says, now concerning the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I should write unto you, for you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord shall come as a thief in the night. Now, if we stopped right there, all right, then we would have a generic statement concerning the nature of the coming of the Lord. Well, the problem with that is Paul didn't stop there, and his discussion here, as noted, is directly linked to his statements in verse 15 and 17 of the previous chapter that it would occur in their lifetime. So here we have Paul twice affirming that the Lord's coming, which is his coming as a thief, was going to be in the lifetime of the Thessalonians. You know, we could actually stop right there. We really could. But you see, people try to say, well, you see, Paul was using the editorial we, or what is sometimes called the royal we. He's speaking of a class of people, a timeless group of people. Well, let me ask you, if you were to go to the book of Thessalonians and see Paul's use, just take really careful note of Paul's use of the personal pronouns. of we, us, and you. You know what you'll find? You will find that Paul uses it in a strictly, strictly contemporary way. So when someone jumps up and tells us, oh, well, yeah, Paul said we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord, but he's using an editorial we, which is a timeless we, then they have to be able to show that Paul is now changing radically his use of the personal pronouns from very personal use, contemporary use, to a timeless, generic use. And not only that, here's something very quick that I want to share with you. According to the grammarians, an editorial we or a royal we is used by a speaker or a writer. Catch the power of this. For those who want the references, I'll be glad to give you references. An editorial or royal we is used when a writer or a speaker wants to speak of himself and his contemporaries as a class of people. You catch the power of that? The scholarly grammarians tell us that the editorial we, the royal we, is used when a speaker or writer wants to speak of himself and his contemporaries. And thus, when someone jumps up and they say, oh, well, yeah, Paul's using the editorial or the royal we, they have to actually be able to show that Paul is using those personal pronouns in kind of a distinctive way. And it's certainly a distinctive way set in opposition to the way that he uses the personal pronouns in the book of Thessalonians. And so, what do we see? Here in Thessalonians, Paul twice says that his audience was going to be alive at the day of the Lord whose coming would be like a thief. That ought to be enough. As we will continue in this study, we will see that Jesus himself posits his coming as a thief in the first century, in unequivocal terms. But don't forget, as we continue, I'm going to talk to you about, I'm going to share with you some thoughts on the times and the seasons. And you don't want to miss that. So guess what? I'll see you on the flip side.